Every day, she would punch the wall hundreds of times. Even after breaking through the wall, Annie wouldn't stop. Her mother is right behind the wall, but instead of stopping her, she mocks Annie for being too weak. Her mother's words only make Annie more diligent. At 7 o'clock sharp, she does pull-ups, and they're one-armed. With no training equipment, Annie lifts cars by hand. Only when the car is above her head does she show a satisfied smile. Annie has aspired to be a superhero since she was a child, punishing evil and fighting crime. She not only has extraordinary strength but can also control light and electricity, earning her the charming nickname Starlight. Starlight has always dreamed of joining the Seven, so she records all her training sessions and sends them to Vought International. But every email vanishes without a trace. Until Starlight received this phone call, all her efforts seemed in vain. Lamplighter of Vought International announced his retirement, and the vacant spot urgently needed a superpowered individual to fill it. Starlight's dream had finally taken its first step. The red carpet was lined with people eager to see this new superhero. Ashley flatteringly praised Starlight for doing a great job, but Starlight was puzzled, as she hadn't done anything yet. However, what Starlight didn't know was that Vought International valued not her superpowers but her sweet appearance. With her joining, the company's approval ratings could increase by at least 3 points, and the darkness within Vought International was far from limited to this. On her first day on the job, Starlight faced a major life challenge. When the Deep found out that Starlight was a fan of his, he took off his pants and wanted Starlight to taste the ocean. The naive Starlight had never seen such a scene and just wanted to escape quickly, but the Deep wouldn't let Starlight off so easily. He teasingly said he just wanted to see how much Starlight truly desired her dream. Hearing her dream being ridiculed, Starlight could no longer hold back. Seeing this, the Deep signaled Starlight not to act impulsively. He said he was second in command here, and everyone's stay or leave was up to him. Starlight could either comply or get out. Caught between her dream and her dignity, Starlight didn't want to give up either, but she had to choose one. Clenching her teeth, she ultimately chose to yield to the Deep. Afterward, Starlight ran to the bathroom, retching uncontrollably. Queen Maeve immediately saw what Starlight had just gone through. She handed Starlight a tissue and angrily told her never to let anyone know about it. But in the bathroom of Vought International, there are no secrets. Translucent had already been lurking there. Starlight's worldview collapsed once more. She couldn't believe that each one of these people was more despicable than the last. Starlight wanted to confide in her mother, but when the words reached her lips, she couldn't say them. All she could do was talk to strangers in the park. This is how she met Hughie for the first time. The two of them, both having experienced tragic events, immediately hit it off. Encouraged by Hughie, Starlight regained her confidence. No matter what others did, she would be true to herself. Soon Starlight has a chance to make her mark when she is tasked to fight a drug gang. However, her partner turned out to be the Deep. Though Starlight was extremely reluctant, she thought that enduring this minor grievance was worth it to punish evil and promote good. The Deep arrogantly boasted about his prowess, but you could tell how much Starlight was holding back by the flickering streetlights, because Starlight already knew that the Deep was not second in command. At best, he was a talking fish.
You ever touch me again, I will burn your eyes out.
Seeing Starlight's imposing manner, the Deep immediately backed down. Fortunately, the appearance of the criminals saved the Deep from further embarrassment. The Deep suggested a pincer attack, then he leapt into the water to prepare for a rear assault. At that moment, just as the criminals were grabbing the drugs, Starlight arrived in time and blasted them far away with a burst of light. Seeing this, the other two criminals tried to escape through the back door, but the Deep was already there waiting. One of them tried to escape, but the Deep punched his back teeth, and then finished the other one with an uppercut. This operation turned out to be surprisingly smooth. Just then, a photographer hurried over. It turned out this mission was just a publicity stunt, aimed at getting some clicks by posting the video online. Once again, Starlight was harshly slapped by reality, but the cruelty didn't stop there. That day, on her way home, Starlight came across two thugs harassing a girl. After her warnings went unheeded, Starlight decisively took action, blasting one thug away with a beam of light. The other thug didn't fare much better. Starlight turned and landed two punches, leaving the thug crying out in pain. After dealing with them, Starlight felt a surge of joy. It felt great to punish evil and promote good. But what Starlight didn't know was that the whole scene had already been recorded by someone with ill intentions. Ashley brought the video to confront Starlight. Now everyone believed Starlight had attacked civilians without reason. Starlight wanted to explain, but Ashley wouldn't listen and canceled all her scheduled activities, leaving her to await further instructions. Nervously, Starlight walked into the CEO's office, ready to explain to Madeline, but Madeline cut her off. It turned out that the girl who had been harassed spoke up for Starlight, and Starlight's popularity surged instead of dropping. Ashley changed her tune, praising Starlight's bravery. The company decided to rebrand her as the neighborhood girl who punishes evil and promotes good, a gimmick that was sure to make the company a fortune. However, Starlight's joy was short-lived and quickly turned to disgust. The operations director unveiled the new costume designed for Starlight. The neckline plunged nearly to her navel. Starlight immediately refused, stating that her body was hers to decide how much to reveal, but Starlight was still too naive. Madeline told her that she could either wear the new costume as the superhero Starlight or stick with her old uniform as the neighborhood girl, Annie. The result was predictable. Starlight had no choice but to wear the new costume to a fan meet and greet. A little girl dressed in the old uniform asked for a photo with her. Starlight praised her for looking pretty, but the girl said she was saving up for the new costume. Starlight felt a bitter pang. A troll shouted rudely that Starlight might as well strip naked. Starlight was about to teach the foul-mouthed person a lesson when Ashley warned her to mind the occasion. After thinking for a moment, she told the girl that she preferred the old uniform. Then, Starlight headed to the changing room to switch back to her clothes. Unexpectedly, she ran into Hughie there. Overjoyed, she didn't notice Frenchie lurking in the changing room. To prevent his comrade from being exposed, Hughie took Starlight to a bowling alley. Knowing Hughie was an ordinary person, Starlight deliberately fumbled her shots to make Hughie feel less awkward. Hughie, in turn, grew fond of the approachable Starlight, but in a daze, he glimpsed his recently deceased wife and was reminded of his mission. Hughie quickly pulled out a device to steal data from Starlight's phone. Unaware of this, Starlight continued dating Hughie as usual, but for some reason, Hughie suddenly asked Starlight for a favor, to get him a ticket to the Diamond Club, even though he knew she didn't want to go near those disgusting people. In the end, Starlight gave in. Because of Starlight's soaring popularity, the company arranged a speech for her, but standing on stage, she realized she was nothing but a puppet, and she finally couldn't hold back and said the words she had long suppressed.
What's immoral is the guy who shoved his dick in my face.
Although she didn't mention the Deep by name, he felt a chill run down his spine, and the Deep is about to encounter a crisis like no other. Starlight's words struck a chord with countless confused women, who collectively spoke out, demanding severe punishment for those who had bullied her. Madeline knew that mishandling this matter could lead to a significant drop in Vought International stock prices. She approached Starlight, hoping she could help calm the situation, or she would be expelled from the Seven. This time, Starlight did not compromise. She declared that she would no longer do anything unrelated to justice, fully aware of Madeline's concerns.
Sorry, I don't do discretion anymore.
After saying this, Starlight walked away confidently. Madeline never expected anyone to defy her like this, but she couldn't afford to fire Starlight now. Reluctantly, she ordered the Deep to issue a public apology before the situation escalated further. As soon as the show aired, the Deep's approval ratings plummeted. Though it was satisfying, Starlight was not the real winner. Vought International turned her story into a movie, and their stock prices soared instead of falling. Overthrowing Vought International was going to be a long and arduous journey. Meanwhile, Vought International continued to thrive. Mesmer had captured the appearances of the boys and handed them over to Homelander, putting the boys in serious trouble. Billy stood by his wife's tombstone, hammer in hand, and began smashing it with all his might, again and again. He did this not for any other reason but to prove that the grave was empty. His wife had been missing for 8 years, and Billy had been searching for 8 years. It seemed that no one but him cared about her fate, not even her sister. Thankfully, Billy had a good friend he could confide in, Hughie. When Billy first met Hughie, he was a coward. But now, even knowing that following Billy meant being in constant danger, Hughie remained calm and composed. The two brothers-in-arms went to a survivors association, hoping to find some solace there, but after listening to their stories, Billy was even more disappointed. Everyone there had been hurt by superheroes. Some had their spines broken, others had lost their manhood to frostbite. Yet, Billy felt no sympathy for them and instead felt pity, because without exception, they all only remembered the good of superheroes, believing it was their fate. Fate. Billy doesn't believe in fate. Lydia saw Billy's discontent and asked him to share his story. Billy politely declined, but Lydia persisted, thinking Billy was just trying to get attention, and handed him the talking stick. Billy couldn't stand it. He pointed at everyone and called them a bunch of lapdogs. Have you ever thought that superheroes do these things just for fun? Billy's hatred for Homelander ran deep. 8 years ago, Homelander took Billy's wife, Becca, into his office. 3 hours later, Becca emerged, disheveled, and then disappeared without a trace. Billy shared this in hopes that Hughie would remember the pain of losing his wife, stay away from Starlight, and join him in taking down Vought International. But Hughie not only refused to listen, but he also became more entangled, even wanting to leave the boys because of Starlight. This led to a huge argument between them. At that moment, Billy received a photo showing his house had been raided. Imam also discovered his accounts had been frozen. Everyone immediately realized they had been exposed. Billy suspected Starlight had betrayed them and prepared to take her out. Fortunately, Imam spoke up for Hughie, pointing out that Starlight had never met him, so the informer had to be someone else. Billy instantly thought of Mesmer. Mesmer, unaware of the impending doom, was leisurely drinking tea. It wasn't until he saw Billy's murderous face that he frantically tried to escape. Mesmer ran to the bathroom and hid in a stall, thinking he could avoid his fate, but that was just wishful thinking. Billy slammed open the iron door. Billy had planned ahead and planted a tracker on Mesmer. Without a word, Billy punched him. During the brief contact, Mesmer glimpsed some of Billy's memories. Mesmer tried to negotiate, but Billy had no patience and landed another uppercut. This time, Mesmer heard the name Becca and got straight to the point.
Your wife? She's missing? I can help you find her.
Hearing this, Billy pulled Mesmer up and pressed his hands to Mesmer's face, letting him delve into his thoughts. Mesmer's expression grew increasingly terrified. Billy had killed many people in his search for his wife, including several superheroes. Mesmer immediately fell to his knees, begging for mercy, but unfortunately for Mesmer, he had provoked a killing machine. Billy grabbed Mesmer's head and violently slammed it into the sink. Each blow was harder than the last, and Billy didn't stop until Mesmer could no longer scream. In a daze, Billy thought of his wife again. They had once been a loving couple that everyone envied, but Homelander had destroyed them. He suspects that his wife has been killed by Homelander, but Homelander wouldn't take the blame, as he was also searching for Becca's whereabouts. He knew that Becca was the reason behind Billy's hostility towards him. Seeing Madeline's intent to hide the truth, Homelander decided to seek another way. With a loud crash, Homelander found Dr. Jonah. Jonah knew the purpose of his visit and didn't intend to hide anything from him. 8 years ago, after the incident, Becca became pregnant with Homelander's child. The fetus developed unusually fast and tore out of her before she could give birth. No one could survive such massive blood loss, and the baby drowned in the blood within 10 seconds. Hearing this, Homelander felt a deep sense of loss because it was difficult for superhumans to have children. Jonah, knowing Homelander's violent tendencies, had kept this from him to avoid a bloodbath. Now, he hoped for Homelander's forgiveness by revealing the truth. Homelander had grown up in Jonah's lab, and the lack of maternal love had twisted his personality. Homelander didn't want to argue with Jonah. Now that Homelander knew his conflict with Billy was irreconcilable, he immediately called an emergency meeting to strike first. The first target was Hughie. Though an ordinary person, he had proven difficult, having taken down Translucent, blackmailed Ezekiel, and manipulated Popclaw. Starlight was instantly alarmed. She couldn't believe her harmless boyfriend was involved. Homelander asked A-Train to explain, but A-Train, not the brightest, didn't remember Hughie despite meeting him twice. It wasn't until Homelander showed a video of them shaking hands that he understood the situation. This must be Hughie's revenge. Starlight pleaded for Hughie, but her actions only aroused Homelander's suspicion. He believed Starlight and Hughie were working together to dismantle the Seven and wanted to execute Starlight on the spot. Queen Maeve quickly intervened, arguing that Starlight had been deceived by Hughie, who had stolen information from her. She asked Homelander to spare Starlight. Homelander grudgingly agreed, but warned that if there were any problems, both would pay the price. Soon after, Hughie received a call. A-Train had kidnapped Hughie's father and demanded he come alone, threatening to kill his father otherwise. The boys hadn't expected trouble to come so quickly, nor that their enemies would stoop to threatening family. They immediately split up to take action. Imam went home to secure his wife and daughter. Hughie returned home alone. Superhero A-Train can run 100 meters in just 86 milliseconds, but who would have thought that such speed was achieved through drug use, with the side effects of an enlarged heart and shrunken testicles? To avoid being kicked out of the Seven, he needed to capture Hughie alive to prove his worth. For this, he kidnapped Hughie's father. However, A-Train didn't know that the ordinary person he underestimated was far more formidable than he imagined. Hughie returned home as instructed. A-Train confirms that Hughie came back alone, and he mocks Hughie, saying, "I didn't realize you were so stupid as to not have a backup plan." But A-Train underestimated Hughie. Hughie calmly took out a vial of Compound V. A-Train, feeling guilty, pretended not to know what it was. Hughie responded by spraying the Compound V on the ground. This made A-Train panic, cursing Hughie for wasting such precious material. Seeing A-Train take the bait, Hughie quickly lied, saying he had plenty more. He promised that if A-Train let his father go, he would ensure A-Train remained the fastest man in the world. Hearing this, A-Train's demeanor changed. He threatened that if Hughie tried any tricks, he could catch his father in milliseconds. Seeing that Hughie was about to face A-Train alone, his father refused to leave. Hughie repeatedly assured his father that he could handle everything. Seeing the determination in his son's eyes, his father finally chose to trust him. After his father left, Hughie and A-Train began to exchange words, with Hughie questioning A-Train about why he killed his wife. Unexpectedly, A-Train became even more agitated, retorting, "So you killed my girlfriend?" Hughie was confused, insisting he didn't kill her, but A-Train wouldn't listen. A-Train believed that his act of killing Hughie's wife was unintentional, whereas Hughie's actions were deliberate. A-Train grew more agitated, unaware that he was in grave danger. Kimiko struck his thigh with an iron rod, breaking it. It turned out that Hughie had been stalling for time. Hughie finally got his revenge, knowing that crippling A-Train's leg was more painful than killing him. How ironic that a once great speedster superhero is now reduced to hobbling around on crutches, but Hughie's situation wasn't much better. The boys were all wanted men, and Hughie couldn't get through to Starlight when he tried to call her for information. Fortunately, their families had been moved to a safe house and were temporarily safe, but only temporarily. Suddenly, the screech of brakes made everyone tense up. Seeing several black cars, they knew trouble was coming. They quickly armed themselves, ready for a fight, except for Billy, who wasn't nervous at all and went out to greet them. It turned out to be federal agents. Billy knew it was only a matter of time before Vought International found them. He and his teammates could take the risks, but their families couldn't. Billy offered Compound V in exchange for Susan's protection. Just then, Hughie finally got a call from Starlight. Starlight believed Hughie had used her and wanted to clear things up face to face. Hughie confessed everything to her. Starlight insisted on taking him to surrender, believing jail would be better than falling into the hands of superheroes. But Hughie knew too many secrets. Going to jail was a death sentence, as Vought International would never let him live. Thinking quickly, he told Starlight about Compound V. Starlight was stunned to learn that her prized superpowers were artificially created. While Starlight was in shock, a red dot from a sniper's laser sight targeted her. Just as Hughie was about to warn her, she was blasted away by a shot. It was Billy, who had come to rescue Hughie. As Starlight tried to get up, Billy shot her again. Hughie realized what he had to do and ran towards Billy, but when they go back, Billy drives past the safe house. Billy explained that their comrades had been captured, and returning would be walking into a trap. He pointed out that the windows had been replaced, and there were concealed tracks on the path. Only the CIA could execute such a meticulous setup, and that's exactly what happened. Kimiko had been the first to notice something was wrong. While Frenchie admired Kimiko's delicate appearance, 2 gas grenades crashed through the window. Frenchie knew he and were hit. He quickly pushed Kimiko into the bathroom and stuffed a towel under the door, hoping she could escape. and are both down, and now they can only pin their hopes on Kimiko. Kimiko held her breath, trying to escape during the commotion, but an attacker threw her to the ground. She broke his leg with a kick and jumped out the window, but as soon as she got out, she was injected with a sedative. She shattered the attacker's arm with a knee strike. Kimiko felt dizzy after running only a short distance. She crawled under a truck, helplessly watching Frenchie and being dragged away. Her vision blurred, and before losing consciousness, she looked at the nail polish Frenchie had applied for her. She couldn't escape her fate either. In the end, they were all captured. Meanwhile, Hughie was naively planning with Billy on how to rescue their comrades. But Billy had no intention of doing that. His sole objective from the beginning was to kill Homelander, and he was willing to sacrifice anyone to achieve it. Seeing through Billy's true nature, Hughie decided to part ways with him and rescue their comrades on his own. But he couldn't do it alone, so Hughie sought out Starlight again, hoping she would help. However, having been deceived by him before, Starlight was unlikely to agree to his request. Seeing this, Hughie immediately tried to guilt-trip Starlight. He said, "Vought International is using Compound V to create super terrorists. Isn't punishing evil your core belief?" Starlight, hearing this, shook her head in shame. She was puzzled because she didn't remember saving him anywhere. Hughie explained that after Robin died, all he could think about was revenge. It was Starlight's appearance that awakened his true nature. Although Starlight was moved by his words, she didn't agree to Hughie's request. She didn't want to be used by anyone again. Hughie faced constant setbacks. Meanwhile, A-Train was gaining momentum. He was pulling a train weighing nearly 10,000 tons for rehabilitation. It turned out he had injected himself with a large amount of Compound V, and his broken bones had long since healed. Not only that, but his strength and speed were also greater than before. He vowed to tear Hughie to pieces if he ever saw him again. Obviously, Hughie was unaware of this. At that moment, he was boldly walking towards the enemy's camp, but the way he swaggered made it seem like he was walking to his death. Sure enough, Hughie was captured before he could get in. 2 soldiers roughly threw him into the cell. Even then, he boasted, "Brothers, I'm here to save you." Frenchie gave Hughie a sympathetic look and then kissed him hard on both cheeks, saying he had never seen anyone speak so grandly about walking to their death. But what Frenchie didn't know was that getting captured was the first step of Hughie's rescue plan. Hughie knew he would be thoroughly searched, so he had hidden a lock-picking tool in his dental retainer. And now he just needed to get it out. It seemed stuck because Hughie had used adhesive to secure it, underestimating the glue's strength. Frenchie tried a few times but failed. Luckily, had an idea. He told Hughie to relax, saying he would punch the tool out of his mouth, which might sting a bit. Surprisingly, it worked. They quickly knocked out the guard and took his weapons. Now, they only needed to find Kimiko. They cautiously searched the yard but still couldn't find any trace of her. Frenchie, filled with worry, ran over despite the danger. He had seen Kimiko in the lab, seemingly undergoing some kind of experiment. Fortunately, Kimiko woke up in time, and Frenchie felt relieved. However, the next second, Frenchie was shot. Rushed to help him, and they found a wall to use as cover. Under the enemy's heavy fire, they couldn't move, let alone rescue Kimiko. Frenchie blamed himself for being too careless. If he hadn't been, he could have provided cover fire for to rescue Kimiko. Seeing Frenchie's anxious expression, couldn't bear it any longer and was about to go after Kimiko. Knowing it was a suicide mission, desperate, Hughie stepped up to cover though he had never handled a gun before. Surprisingly, Hughie got lucky. In his wild shooting, he managed to hit one of the enemies. The enemies, thinking Hughie was a sharpshooter, didn't dare to show themselves. But who had ever seen someone killing while shouting apologies? Hughie quickly ran out of bullets. Frenchie reloaded the magazine for him while waiting for to return. They waited for a long time but saw no sign of him. Just as they feared the worst, rushed out during a lull in the enemy's attack. Hughie immediately provided cover fire, but his shooting style was so wasteful that they soon ran out of bullets. The enemies, realizing they were out of ammo, closed in on them. It seemed like the end. Just as Hughie thought all his efforts were in vain, a bright light suddenly shone behind them. Several soldiers flew over Hughie's head. It was Starlight who had arrived, looking stunning at that moment, but there was no time for admiration. Starlight swiftly took out one soldier with a single move. Another tried to sneak up on her from behind but was knocked out with 2 punches. The last guard was pinned to the ceiling by a powerful light beam. There was no time to talk. They quickly grabbed Kimiko and prepared to retreat. At that moment, a train appeared. Hughie, realizing the danger, told them to go ahead without him. He knew that A-Train's target was him, and staying behind was the only way to ensure his friend's safety. A-Train is looking unusually grumpy at the moment. Hughie knew he must have injected Compound V and was ready to sacrifice himself. Starlight tried to plead for Hughie, but A-Train was consumed by hatred. A fight was inevitable. With the lights flickering, Starlight attacked first, missing with her initial strike and quickly following up with another, but to A-Train, Starlight's attack seemed slowed down by countless factors. Time itself appeared half frozen. Using his speed, A-Train created a swift field around him, making him invincible within it. He dodged each light beam effortlessly, closing the distance between him and Starlight in the blink of an eye. With one palm strike, A-Train sent Starlight flying 10 meters away. A-Train then walked slowly towards Hughie. Yes, Popclaw was not directly killed by Hughie, but her death was because of him.
You killed the only person I've ever loved. I didn't kill her. I know. I did.
Perhaps the true source of A-Train's twisted psyche was having to kill his beloved with his own hands. He wanted to vent his hatred for Homelander onto Hughie, but just then, A-Train's expression turned into a grimace, and it was clear that the side effects of Compound V had saved Hughie's life. A-Train's heartbeat grew increasingly rapid, and then he collapsed in agony, quickly falling silent. Seeing the man who killed his wife lying lifeless before him should have made Hughie happy, but for some reason, he couldn't feel any joy. Maybe he saw a reflection of his former self in A-Train's anguish. At that moment, Hughie's hatred vanished. All he wanted was to save the man in front of him. He instructed Starlight to call for an ambulance while he performed CPR on A-Train. Seeing this, Starlight had no choice but to call for headquarters support. She urged Hughie to escape, promising to save A-Train, Hughie reluctantly stood up and left. A-Train's life is uncertain at this moment. Madeline is also in trouble at this point. Susan came to the door with evidence against Vought International and said she'd put an end to Vought. For half a century, Vought had claimed that superheroes were God's gift, but the truth showed they were merely lab-grown monsters. Susan advised Madeline to abandon the dream of integrating these monsters into the military. To turn the tide, Madeline hoped Homelander would complete a national tour to boost support for Vought International's military integration. However, Homelander was still resentful over her hiding Becca's pregnancy and refused to cooperate. Seeing this, Madeline resorted to her trump card. She knew Homelander had always lusted after her and promised him a reward if he completed the tour. Homelander hesitated for only half a second before happily filming the tour video. The next moment, I have to admit, Homelander's ability to change his expression is impressive. He then eagerly went to claim his reward. Madeline, of course, did not break her promise. Afterward, Homelander lay in Madeline's arms like a child. Madeline took the opportunity to make a new request, asking Homelander to carry out a secret mission. Homelander descended from the sky, and it was time for his hunt. At that moment, the terrorists were still focused on making drugs. Completely unaware of the impending doom, Homelander activated his laser eyes and instantly killed 2 terrorists, then entered a mode where anyone he saw died. Even those hiding upstairs were not safe, as Homelander could see through walls. One foolish terrorist tried to sneak up on him from behind, but Homelander turned and killed him with a glance. Facing such a killing machine, the terrorists had no choice but to flee. But it wasn't just the terrorists who were terrified, even the Navy SEALs outside were scared. The consequences of provoking someone like Homelander were obvious. In no time, Homelander had killed everyone in the building. One person's death was particularly gruesome. Homelander crushed his skull underfoot. Feeling refreshed, Homelander walked out of the enemy camp and saw an unfortunate survivor. Before leaving, Homelander praised the Navy SEALs on the scene. In reality, Homelander's true goal was not to eliminate the terrorists but to frame them. He took the opportunity to put all the blame for Compound V on them. Anyone with a bit of intelligence wouldn't believe that terrorists could create such a compound. But now, who could prove Vought International's involvement? Moreover, with the emergence of super terrorists, Patriot missiles, D-2 bombers, and F-35 fighters were obsolete. Now, only Vought International could handle these super terrorists. In the end, the Department of Defense approved Madeline's proposal to integrate superheroes into the military. The situation had spiraled beyond Susan's control. Her only advice to the boys was to run. When Billy heard the news, it hit him like a bolt from the blue, but he had to pretend everything was fine. Unfortunately, his teammates saw through his facade. They planned to flee overseas immediately, but Billy wasn't ready to give up. He had one last ace in the hole. He sought out Grace. Grace was the one who had originally told Billy that his wife was raped by Homelander, spurring him to seek revenge. She was essentially the founder of the boys. However, the tragic death of her grandson had shattered Grace's ambitions, and now she wanted nothing more than to live a peaceful life. After much insistence from Billy, Grace finally gave him a lead. It was Homelander's complex feelings for Madeline. She was his only weakness. This clue indeed gave Billy an idea. To defeat Homelander, Billy decided to kidnap Madeline. Madeline was holding a celebration at that moment. The soon-to-retire CEO, Stan, was very pleased with how she handled the company crisis and intended to promote her. Madeline attributed it to luck, saying a super terrorist appeared just in time to help her through the tough situation. But how many coincidences can there be in the world? Homelander confessed to Madeline that he was the one who had A-Train deliver Compound V to terrorist organizations across the country. Even though the survival rate for adults injecting it was far lower than for babies, some still managed to survive. Madeline praised Homelander for his foresight. Caressing his face like a mother, Homelander casually asked about Becca, but Madeline replied that she had miscarried. Homelander was taken aback, as her answer didn't match Jonah's story. One was a miscarriage, the other was a postpartum hemorrhage. There had to be more to the story. Madeline had no idea she had already provoked 2 killing machines. She only realized something was wrong when she got home, but by then it was too late. Billy had already snuck into her house and strapped her with C4 explosives, then notified Homelander. Homelander appeared with a loud bang. He could see Billy's blood pressure was soaring, but he didn't feel fear. He felt anger. Billy thought he could avenge his wife Becca. Even if he couldn't kill Homelander, he could at least let him feel the pain of losing his beloved. But what Homelander said next made Billy's faith crumble. Homelander explained that the fault wasn't his. It was Becca who voluntarily approached him out of infatuation. Moreover, Becca wasn't dead. She had given birth to Homelander's son. After Madeline let it slip, Homelander went back to Jonah and forced out the truth. Knowing the truth, Homelander was disgusted with Madeline, and the sound of the baby's cries made him more and more annoyed. He asked Madeline if she had a word of truth in her mouth.
I said I'm scared. Of you. I'm scared of you.
Homelander thanked Madeline for her honesty this time. He gave her a final kiss and then used his laser eyes to kill the woman full of lies. Billy realized that without Madeline, Homelander had no weaknesses. In despair, he detonated the bomb. After the explosion, Billy found himself on a grassy field. There, he saw his wife, whom he had been searching for 8 years. But this wasn't heaven. Homelander had saved him from the explosion. He wanted Billy to see his child. It turned out that Billy's years of revenge had been nothing more than his own one-sided obsession. After that, Billy disappeared. No one knew where he went or if Homelander had killed him. With Madeline's death, Vought International entered a new era. Stan took over the reins and personally negotiated with the Department of Defense to help the military rid the world of super-terrorists at a cost of tens of billions a year. City mayors also had to pay a hefty price to hire superheroes for maintaining law and order. Seizing the opportunity, Vought International publicly announced Translucent's death, portraying him as a hero brutally killed by terrorists during a mission. Homelander's heartfelt speech moved countless civilians to mourn the fallen hero. With the PR department's full efforts, a simulated video of Billy viciously insulting Madeline and pressing the detonator was repeatedly broadcast on social media. Simultaneously, the government cooperated with Vought International to issue a nationwide manhunt for Billy and his associates. Under the nationwide hunt, the boys had no place to hide. Frenchie used his underworld connections to return to being an arms dealer, with Kimiko occasionally acting as his bodyguard. Once a military medic, stayed to help treat gunshot wounds for gang members. Only Hughie has nothing to do and is currently hiding in a cramped basement. Compared to the now famous Starlight, he was as insignificant as a speck of dust. But in reality, Hughie had his own plans. Even without Billy, his score with Vought International was far from settled. Only by bringing down Vought International could he see the light of day again.